what was happening in these temptations? It's very interesting. If you look through the Gospels, we know the writer of Hebrews says Jesus was tempted in every way that we're tempted. So he was not immune from any appetite of the flesh or any temptation that we might face in our lives. But what you see in the direct encounter of spiritual warfare that he has with the devil himself is that Jesus is not primarily tempted with the allures of materialism or the lusts of and wooing of some prostitute, or he's not tempted to become a thief. You don't see him. We never have that sense of the deepest agony of sweating blood over those types of things. But here when he's hungry, here's when he's tired, here's when he's beginning his ministry, what is it that the devil is offering him? What do these temptations have in common? If you just turn these stones to bread, then you won't be hungry. If you'll just defy gravity, you'll prove you're the Lord. If you would just take all of the thrones of this world by just simply acknowledging me. What does all this have in common? Phil Yancey, in his excellent book, The Jesus I Never Knew, deals with this temptation scene with tremendous insight and says this is essentially the temptation that the devil brought to Jesus. And that was to deny his humanity while only grasping his divinity. To do the stuff of God, but not the stuff of a human being. To bypass hunger. To defy gravity. To take all of what it meant for him to be here as God, but to not really be human. He was offering a temptation of a shortcut to glory, a way that would be skipping the cross, skipping the painful stuff of being a human being. And so, at the end of all this temptation, at Matthew 4 verse 10, Jesus said to him, "Begone, Satan." Now what you need to know is that phrase, that verb there, hupago, begone, is the exact phrase that Jesus uses in Matthew 16 when he says, "Get behind me." It's the same phrase. What he says here in Matthew 4 is exactly what he says while he's looking at Peter. Hupago satana. Go away. Be gone. This is the strongest rebuke that Jesus has, and it is a rebuke that was spoken in Matthew chapter 4. Luke said the devil left Jesus until an opportune time. Here was an opportune time. In Peter's glorious revelation of Jesus Christ. And then Jesus began to say, "Now, my friends, my brothers, I need to tell you what is going to happen. I am going to go, and I'm going to go to Jerusalem. I'm going into the headquarters of the religious spirit of this world. And there I'm going to suffer many things. And it's going to be the religious leaders, the one who should bless me, but instead they're going to hurt me. And I'm going to have to die. But on the third day, I'm going to be raised again." And it was to that Peter said, "No, may it never be." It was a double negative. He said, "No way shall it ever happen at all." No, Jesus, no, is what he's saying. That can't be what the Messiah is all about. And Jesus, when he heard Peter talking like that, Jesus looked at him and he said, "I know that voice. That is the same voice that I heard in the wilderness after my baptism." And so he said the same thing that he said in Matthew 4, "Hupago satana, be gone. I rebuke you. No! No! Whatever you tempt me with, don't tempt me with this." Why is he so mad? Because it was for this purpose that he'd come. Here's the irony, here's the love, here's the beauty of it. In whatever way he was mad at Peter, and he wasn't calling him Satan, he was speaking to Satan, but he was looking at Peter. He was saying, "What you've said is so aligned with the very thing that Satan said to me to try to stop my ministry in the first place." And the reason that he was mad was because he loved Peter so much. If you stop me from suffering and dying, then I can't save you. He would say similar things to Peter. When Peter would say, you can't wash my feet. And Jesus said, if you don't let me wash you, you have no part of me. He is saying, you must let me suffer and die. There's so much at stake. What if Jesus had taken the crown without the cross? If he'd taken the crown, the glory, but never the cross, he'd never know what it was really like to be human and to suffer and die. And the writer of Hebrews wouldn't be able to say that he was tempted in every way that we are tempted. In order to be tempted as we've been tempted, he had to really be human. He had to really face the temptations. He had to really go through the suffering. He knows what you're going through because Jesus went through it. He did not deny his humanity in order to only attain his deity. He is God, he is man, and he has died for you. And had he listened to Peter, we would have no advocate who understands what we're going through. It would mean if he'd taken the crown without the cross, there'd be no payment for your sin. There'd be no justice, therefore, in releasing a spiritual inheritance to you. Because through the cross, not only did Jesus be reckoned as if he'd committed your sin, but you have been reckoned as if you'd lived his meritorious life. And there'd be no justice in the world because sin would not have been punished, and therefore you and I would still be under our sin. And if he had not died, but he had only lived his glorious life, then he would have never been resurrected. And if he'd never died and been resurrected, then when we died, we wouldn't be resurrected, and we wouldn't reign in glory with him forever. And all the prophecies and promise of God in the Old Testament would be rendered invalid if Jesus had listened to Peter that day. So yes, Jesus was mad on that day. Yes, he looked at Peter, this very man that he had just blessed, and said, I'm going to build my church on you. And he heard this voice saying, no, you must never suffer. And when he heard that, everything rose up within him in the spiritual battle. And he said no to the devil. He said no to the enemy, because I love you, Peter. I love my disciples. And it's for this purpose that I have come. The Son of Man must go and suffer many things, be crucified, dead, buried, and raised from the dead. You learn a lot about a person if you find out what they get most mad about. And Jesus was mad that day at the devil. And he was mad because it was the primal temptation that he faced. Would he be able to keep his commitment to suffer and die in our place? And the good news of the gospel is yes, he did. He died for Peter and you and me because he refused to listen to Peter that day. And that's the gospel.